Black perspectives haven't always been centered in the telling of America's story. Now, we're taking center stage. Introducing NPR's Black Stories, Black Truths, a collection of Black-led stories from NPR's podcasts. Search NPR Black Stories, Black Truths wherever you get your podcasts.
Support comes from Mercedes-Benz of Buckhead, where the power of electric meets the power of Mercedes. Introducing a lineup of electric vehicles, the EQB, the EQS sedan and SUV, the EQE sedan and SUV. The vehicles are all electric. The feeling is all Mercedes. Mercedesofbuckhead.com.
Welcome back to Political Breakfast. This is our first edition for the week on WABE. I'm your host, Lisa Ram, and both our strategists are here today, Brian Robinson and Theron Johnson. Hello to both of you. Hope you had a wonderful weekend.
I did. I had a great time. Had Girl Scout night at the Atlanta Gladiators hockey game with my daughter, which she went from saying hockey sucks on the way to the game to yelling, "Let's go Glads" at the game. So she's now a hockey fan. And I'm sure Theron knows more about this, but I think it's big news in Atlanta that Killer Mike, who's got a WABE affiliation, won 3 Grammys last night, then was detained by police. Of course, I don't know all the details, but still, 3 Grammys, that's a pretty big deal.
I'm a black man in America, and as a kid, I had a dream to become a part of music. And that 9-year-old is excitedly dancing inside of me right now.
Oh, that's a major, major deal. And we were all applauding. And then I'm like, okay, is this a joke? He just got arrested? I mean, no Grammy parties for Killer Mike last night. I don't know. What did you think there? And I mean, I really thought it was a joke at first. I was like, wait a minute. He was just on stage accepting these awards, and now he's being detained by police.
You know, Mike is a stellar human being that has been around for a very long time. Lisa, I was on a podcast interview with him, a good friend of ours. We share friend, Fani Willis, had a podcast. And so Mike in this album, Michael, it was definitely one of my favorite albums in 2023. And so to go and as he called it, we've all seen the clips. He said it was a clean sweep, it was a sweep. And then, in typical Killer Mike fashion, he talks about how you can continue to dream. You're never too old. You're never too late to really do it. So then boom, I see all this breaking and I'm like, man, go Mike. And then the next video I see is that him walking,
couldn't believe
peacefully.
Couldn't believe it.
Let's be fair here. I think some of the things I've been reading online and unconfirmed sources that it was a misdemeanor charge. So I think we'll have to just wait for the details. But just huge shout out to him, man, for his hard work in this album. Just a good friend and a good man. And Brian and I were at the Emmy nominations with him last year when he got an Emmy with the WABE show that he does. And so just a good guy.
Yeah. Lily and I, our producer, Lily Oppenheimer, we spent it was about a year and a half ago. We spent some time with Killer Mike, and he really is just a stand-up guy and cares about Atlanta, cares about community. And, I was really happy for him last night. The groundhog saw his shadow, so spring is almost here. So I was applauding that over the weekend.
Absolutely. Could have done with a little less wind. It would have been okay.
For sure.
What was crazy, Lisa, Friday was your... it tricked us, and as my grandmother would say, this is nothing but pneumonia weather.
I love
Friday
that.
was great, sunny, and then, man, Saturday and Sunday, to Brian's point, the wind and the cold and the temperature. So we're not out of the cold yet, but definitely glad we got a little rain, too, because my grass needs it.
Well, as you guys know, on Friday, we had another development, and this was a late one, and we heard the response that Fani Willis was required to file in court, and it was very detailed, over 100 pages, and I know you two probably haven't sorted through it all, but I just wanted to get your reaction to some of the things that she said, and Theron, I'll begin with you.
Well, it was, like you said, Lisa, it was a late breaking Friday news. As you know, we had already taped the Georgia game on our TV show that I do every week. And so my message on the show, and I'll say what my message will be here on the next week, is the fact still remains that no matter the personal relationship, the extent of it, the divorce, which has been temporarily settled, the receipts and all the documents, the number one goal here is that how do you do your job as a district attorney in a district attorney's office to create a jury that is going to be able to fairly look at the former president and his co-defendants in a factual and fair way, and not allow yourself to be distracted by all of the distractions that have come up. And so that's my first response. My second response is, Lisa, it was a 100+ page response. A lot of legal terms. I didn't read the entire response, but I read the highlights. And so while she did admit that there was a personal relationship between her and Nathan Wade after he was hired to be special prosecutor, she did not get into whether or not they had any physical intimacy. She called the attacks by the attorney, meritless. Lastly, which I know we'll get into a little later, is that this was not grounds for her to be removed as district attorney from this case. So again, where I am feeling on this week is now, okay, you come out, you've admitted that there's been some personal relationship between you and this special prosecutor who you hired. Now the job has got to be, if Donald Trump is going to be on trial, I think I read somewhere as early as August, how do you put together a jury that fast that's going to be impartial, that's going to be objective and follow the facts, and not allow the personal decisions, judgments, optics that's been going on with the district attorney, special prosecutor, to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, she said the existence of a relationship between members of a prosecution team in and of itself is simply not a status that entitles a criminal defendant any remedy. Brian, I don't know, what were your thoughts after, her response came down?
Well, it took a long time for us to hear anything from her on this at all. And when she did speak, it was, as you said, something she had to do. It was compelled that she respond to this legal motion in the court. So I don't know that the details of it really matter so much, because she's not just in the court of Fulton County. She's also in the court of public opinion. And this has undermined the credibility of the entire case. Rightly or wrongly, this calls into question her judgment. It calls into question the propriety of hiring Mr. Wade for this case. Even though I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, she said that the personal relationship began after she had hired him. I guess that could be pertinent. But it does certainly look like there was an inappropriate relationship as far as the fact that she, with the command of taxpayer dollars, was providing a salary, providing compensation to someone with whom she was romantically involved. That is a conflict of interest in the eyes of many, if not the letter of the law. Maybe it is by the letter of the law. And I do think it's fair to go after her about it. When you are questioning the integrity of people, and I certainly feel like that's the case with the alternate electors, you're questioning their integrity and their motives, you've got to be above reproach. And I don't think that she's quite met that standard here.
She says that she has no plans to step down, Theron. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, this is a woman who we have talked about a lot on this podcast, Lisa. Let's just remind our listeners, and Lily, you know this as well. She ran an aggressive campaign against the former district attorney, Paul Howard, and it was a well-funded campaign. She had built up all of this bipartisan support across the county, and it was a pretty much of a mandate. And then she came in early on, handled a lot of things very well, and has always, Lisa, been very defiant and very methodical and patient as far as how she decides to prosecute cases. Let's not forget, she definitely made a slow decision on whether or not Governor Brian Kemp had to actually, sort of the charges against him before he ran for the re-election in 2022. She did make a little mistake, with Burt Jones and appearing on a fundraiser. But if you go back to the Trump case, the evidence and the indictments that she were able to pull off was pretty impressive, right? We can get into whether they're guilty or not guilty. I kind of just go through that sort of litany of how we got here to say, hey, look, this is the most consequential case, I believe, in American history. This is the most consequential case, not only for her as a district attorney in Fulton County, but everyone is watching this case because this is the first time that a former president of the United States of America has been indicted and is in a process of being, able to have a fair trial. And that process of getting him to that point has been one that's been very, very difficult. So I'm not surprised that she's saying she's not going to step down. I mean, of course, she's not going to come out and say, I'm going to step down, or Nathan is going to step down, because it's too late. That's something, and B-Rob is the PR expert on here too, and I do a little bit as well. That is something you should have done probably before all this really kind of got out of hand. So now you've filed your briefing.
Yeah.
You're going on a record of what's happened. You're going to be judged about what's in your document. They're going to have to go to a hearing. They're going to have to talk about this. So now how do you change the narrative and put together the jury, stick to the date, and make sure that Donald Trump and his co-defendants go to trial?
Yeah, we have talked about her a lot on this podcast, and mainly, Theron, you've often pointed out how meticulous she was and how she crossed her T's and dotted her I's. Are you surprised that she's found herself in this predicament?
You're not gonna let me off the hook, Lisa. I know you're gonna just push me. Look, I'm okay. This is what the streets are saying. All right? I like to always talk about what the streets are saying. It's a mixed bag because look, a part of us in the streets. Look, she's human, Lisa. I mean, people make mistakes. People develop feelings for others. This is not me saying it because I don't want to get deposed, but even in her document, the statement you just read, right? It is not an uncommon culture for you to spend time with people when you're prosecuting a case. And so I don't want to beat up on her and say, hey, who am I to judge, right? And I said this before, let's get out of people's bedrooms. Let's get out of, their personal life, right? That's not something that, we should be that involved in. But I know what B-Rob is going to say. When you're the district attorney for Fulton County and you're prosecuting the former president of the United States, who has a reputation, who has made a living and became president of the United States by destroying his opponents, by literally finding out information about them and using it against them aggressively to defame them, to hurt their credibility. I just think that, man, I think if she had known that it was going to be this bad, she wouldn't have done it. So the other side of the streets are just saying, man, no one ever, where are your friends? No one kind of came to you or Nathan and said, hey guys, not right now. Let's just, let's get past this case, or let's understand, guys, if this were to come out, this would look really bad for the both of you all. And
so, where were the strategists? Where were the strategists when this was developing?
she has a team around her. And again, I want to be very clear what I'm saying, because I know most people don't listen to the podcast in its entirety. So some of this make the radio version. Who am I to judge? I am not going to pass judgment on anyone else because I'm not in that position. It's disappointing. The optics I've said were bad. It's a judgment call, but ultimately, it's just, to me, it's the most consequential case that we will face in our history, and the decision to enter into that relationship while that case is going on, knowing who you're trying to prosecute. I think that in lies why are we just trying to really understand the logic behind the decision.
Brian, you chime in here. What are your thoughts about her finding herself in this situation?
I think the proper protocol would have been, they're working together. He is receiving taxpayer funds at her direction. She has sole authority, something that she actually said in that church speech that she gave. It is her decision. And when it became romantic, the onus was on them to be transparent and to be public with that information, and perhaps for him to step aside and have someone else come in here and do it. I tell you one thing that really kind of gets under my skin about the whole thing, because I agree with Theron. I don't care what you do in your bedroom. You can have a romantic relationship. That's cool with me. But you can't give your romantic partner taxpayer funds when there's no board, there's no panel, no elected officials other than you who are deciding it. But what gets my goat is that they kept this a secret. It should have been transparent. And instead of coming out and saying, yes, this is true, she came out and said this is racist. And she made it about race, which no one else had done. No one else had made it about race. It was completely about a relationship and taxpayer dollars. That was the issue. And so for a lot of people, and I'll put myself in this category, when you immediately go to claims of racism, when the facts are bad for you, that hurts your credibility with a wider audience, with the public. And that certainly has hurt her credibility with me. And as y'all know, I have not been a Fani basher. As y'all also know, in 2020, I was like, please, Fulton County, elect this lady because Paul Howard's doing a terrible job, right? I mean, I really wanted to see the changes that she was going to bring. But what the Trump side and the defendants in this case, what they have to do is buy time till the election. And so that is what we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this. They just have to wait till the election. And if they slow her down anyway, they may be able to get off the hook. Because you got to think, like, this election in many ways is a jury of 75 million people. And if they put Donald Trump in office, I think it's very difficult for local prosecutors to continue these cases. Rightly or wrongly, I'm not judging, but the jury of 75 million will speak very loudly in 2024. And if they can wait it out till then, they may be able to avoid some of this.
The world has changed, from shifts in power to a mental health crisis. So with all this social change, how do we balance the human desire for empathy, the business need for productivity, and the hope to make an impact in our community? This is a new podcast, The Social Impact Leader. I'm Jeff Schinnebarker. Join me as we explore people doing work a little different. Available every Wednesday at wabe.org/podcast or wherever you get your podcasts.
WABE.
Sounds Like ATL is a music documentary series that takes an in-depth look at the artists amplifying Atlanta's famed music community. Built around a desire to highlight Atlanta's diverse and world-renowned music scene, each episode features unforgettable, intimate musical performances by fresh new musical guests, each with exclusive interviews about the stories behind their music. Listen at wabe.org or wherever you find your podcasts.
Well, we've heard her lay out her case. Where does it go from here?
Well, and look, B-Rob just did a really good job of saying exactly, what we think the defendant team for the former president is trying to do. They're trying to buy time. They're trying to cast doubt on her ability and Nathan Wade's ability to fairly prosecute this case. And, we now have been talking about this for almost a month. And so, gold star for the Trump defense team, because they've definitely taken us away from talking about the people who pled guilty, the charges they pled guilty to, the upcoming dates for the trial, to now we're talking about the relationship, the extent of it between a special prosecutor and the district attorney. So I think where it goes from here, Lisa, is from what I've heard from a couple legal experts. I think there's a hearing coming up on February 15th. I can't remember if it's just Nathan Wade who has to testify or maybe it's both of them. And so I think, we will know a lot more after the February 15th hearing and conversation. And then I think then the judge or someone will have to, someone who's going to be assigned to look at this to whether or not it's unlawful. And I've been very reluctant to take it here, Lisa, because all my friends, all my boys said, boy, don't go on that podcast and say it looked bad and it's wrong, but it ain't illegal. Well, I'm not saying that. I mean, we're past that point because I don't want to discredit the severity of this new development. But the truth is, Lisa, I think according to state law, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, it's whether or not this is unlawful or illegal for her to be removed from the case and Nathan Wade to be removed from the case. And then lastly, if she were to step down or she was to be removed from the case, I don't think there's a district attorney in the state of Georgia
who would pick it up,
that would want to pick it up. And it's going to take so much time. Yeah, it's going to take so much time to do it. So I don't think she steps down. The hearing on February 15th will tell us a lot. And then lastly, while he may not have to go to trial in August, it may be a little later. But ultimately, as Brian said, the goal from the defense team is to prolong this and postpone it enough where it doesn't interfere in his reelection bid.
You agree with that strategy, Brian?
Yes, I do. They're right. I think that is the strategic goal, is to kind of drag this out a little bit. And he's also right. No Republican DA is going to want to take this on whatsoever. It's just bad politics for them. And they're going to get put on a national stage, and they're going to be put in a situation where they basically have to just dismiss the case because they'll lose at home in their home county election if they don't, because they're obviously in a Republican district. But if they drop it, they also face the threats that would come from people on the left who see this as an inside job, partisan hackery, doing stuff for former President Trump. So no one wants to be put into that vice grip. It's going to have to be someone, maybe it gets bumped up to the Attorney General's office and they deal with it. I don't know what the procedure would be. It may go to the Prosecuting Attorney's Council, and Pete Scandalakis decides where it goes from there. But no one's going to want to touch this, and no one really has the resources for it. I mean, Fulton County is the biggest county in the state, therefore it's going to have the biggest revenue. No other county or prosecutorial district can really take this on. It's overwhelming, which I will say from the very beginning, I've said this is too much for a county DA's office to do. I've always thought that the bite of the apple was going to be a potential choke hazard.
I like that analogy.
That's good. He was practicing that one. But no, real quick, Lisa, that was a good one. Look, Lisa, the one thing that we can't say, and this is where I do have to kind of, respectfully push back with my good friend. Again, up until the breaking bombshell that this allegation was made based on a divorce filing that had not been sealed, I think a lot of people felt like Fani Willis's case in Fulton County was the one that was actually moving the fastest and moving the most efficiently. So, it did take a long time. I mean, remind our listeners, this guy was hired, back in November of 2021, I think I maybe read. Right around the time when he filed a divorce. So all of 22, all of 23, but kind of half of 23, they worked on this for a year and a half, and I think it was pretty ironclad. A couple people pushed back on whether or not all those defendants should have been indicted. We later read that there was more people who were being questioned, questioned people who were possibly going to be indicted. And so I think, it was a lot. Brian is right. I mean, it's a lot for anybody to deal with, whether it's a small county or big county like Fulton County, or even the federal government, which also takes its time sometimes. But this has definitely been a distraction, and we just have to kind of wait and see what's going to happen, because it's just so much that we don't know until after this hearing.
This has been 3 years since the first acts that are at the heart of this case took place. We saw a year or more of jury selection, and then the grand jury saga, and the funny incident in the spring where the grand jury chairwoman comes out and has a media tour for the week. This has just been going on and on and on forever. And I think that there's a fatigue locally with the case, and I think that plays against Fani too. People, you can't keep people on the edge of their seats for a movie that goes on too long. And I think this movie may be getting into, Martin Scorsese type of length, right? Where, 3 hours, Martin, that's good. We're good.
Right. At least getting close. Well, Fani Willis is the topic of a new book. Willis, along with Donald Trump. It's called Find Me the Votes. We're going to have the authors on our next episode later in the week, and we're going to talk Fani Willis again. So we'll see you guys then. Theron Johnson is a Democratic strategist, public affairs, and government consultant, and most recently a senior advisor to the Biden Georgia campaign. Brian Robinson is a Republican strategist, communications consultant, and former deputy chief of staff for Governor Nathan Deal. See you guys soon.
Thanks, Lisa.
Happy Black History Month, Lisa. We can't forget that.
Happy Black History Month.